This is MichMash, a weekly conversation where we try to unjumble an important and sometimes under-the-radar statewide story that affects you. I'm Cheyna Roth.
And I'm Alethia Kasben.
Alethia, I have a question for you. How many vacant seats are there currently in the state Senate?
One seat, and it has been vacant since January with, as of this recording, no end in sight. The open seat, the 35th Senate District, was vacated by then Senator Kristen McDonald-Rivet in January when she went to Washington, D.C. to serve in the U.S. House. It's on the governor to call the special election, and she has yet to do so.
And while Whitmer has been pretty quiet about this special election, there's very good reason for Democrats to not want to hold this election. They have a very tiny majority in the Senate. If the seat were to go to a Republican, the Senate would be in a tie. Now, the lieutenant governor is a Democrat, but that doesn't guarantee success for Democrats in the Senate, does it? Alethia, break this down for me because there was some math involved.
Right. So if a Republican were to win this seat in a special election, the Senate would be at a 19-19 tie, which one might think, okay, a 19-19 tie, the lieutenant governor is a Democrat who can cast a tie-breaking vote. Democrats still have a one-seat voting majority, but not really, because all Republicans would have to do is withhold a vote. So anything that the Democrats support and the Republicans oppose would get 19 yes votes from every Democrat serving if a Republican were to win this special election seat. However, Republicans don't have to cast 19 votes no. They can have 1, 2, 3 Republicans sit out the vote, and then it would fail because anything in the Senate to pass needs to have 20 yes votes. So if the vote were 19-18, 19-17, Gilchrist, the Democratic lieutenant governor, would not be able to cast a tie-breaking vote, and the issue would fail. So essentially, Democrats would lose any functional majority, even with a 19-19 tie.
And it's important to note that although this is a close district, Democrats nationally are actually performing pretty well in special elections. Whenever this one is called, it will be very competitive.
But Republicans are still furious Governor Whitmer hasn't called this special election yet. When the House was down 2 Democrats at the end of 2023 because they had won different elections, it took 2 weeks for the governor to set the special election in those 2 districts. Special elections are sometimes called quickly and can happen fast, and sometimes they just don't. When former Congressman John Conyers, a Democrat, resigned at the end of 2017, then Governor Rick Snyder, a Republican, left the seat vacant for almost a year when he scheduled the special election to coincide with the August and November 2018 elections that year.
To me, it feels like Democrats are sort of waiting for things with Trump to potentially get so bad that people that might swing either way are more likely to vote Democrat in protest of Republicans broadly. Alethia, you're on the ground in Lansing. When do you think the governor will call this special election, and when do you think would make the most sense?
So I don't know when the governor will call this election, right? I do think what makes the most sense in terms of timing is something later this year. So like the August and November off-year elections that'll happen. That would be a good time to call this election, I think. It would make sense politically to say, hey, local communities might have an election at this time, so we'll just add this to those ballots. We're not going to add an extra election earlier. And so maybe in the next month or so, we'll see movement starting on that. But, who knows? Maybe Whitmer doesn't call a special election until next year, although I would be very surprised.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we're going to be speaking with the senator from my neck of the woods, Majority Leader Winnie Brinks.
Welcome back to MichMash. I'm Alethia Kasben, and we're joined now by Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks. Senator Brinks, welcome to MichMash.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start broad. We're a few months into the legislative session. It's a very different session from last year when Democrats held a trifecta. Now the Republicans control the state house. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being perfect governance, how are things going so far?
Well, I don't think there's ever a perfect 10 in state government, certainly not in my time in the legislature. And every term has its challenges, and these are certainly unique. Some predictable, some unpredictable. If I had to give it a grade, I don't know. It's, things over in the Senate are pretty smooth. Things are going pretty well. So on our side of the chamber, I feel very satisfied with where we're at, given the current realities. In terms of the entire legislature being able to, work together across the aisle, I think we've proven that it's possible. Still a lot of potential for improvement there in terms of upcoming things that must be done for our state. But yeah, I think over in the House, it still seems a little bit rocky in terms of being able to get things done in a bipartisan way and to run the chamber in a way that's not, incredibly antagonistic.
So Senate Democrats, are in court right now trying to get Speaker of the House Matt Hall to present, those 9 bills left over from last term. The judge said the House has a duty to present these bills, but also didn't want to order the House to do so. You're now appealing. What is the latest there, and why are these bills, so important to get to the governor?
Yeah, I think, ultimately it is incredibly important that we follow the state constitution. So that is probably the big overarching reason why we thought it was so important to pursue this in the courts. But it's really incredibly important for the people who are impacted by these bills as well. And that would, be firefighters, public servants, teachers, corrections workers, all of whom deserve to have what is coming to them through these bills that we passed through both chambers last year. So it is certainly our hope that that happens, and we're using every single tool in our tool belt to make sure that we increase the likelihood that those bills get to the governor's desk and signed into law. So those are kind of our big reasons. Our latest legal action was to ask the Supreme Court to take these up. We believe, and we are hearing from our constituents who are impacted by these, the lack of these bills being in place, with seeing increased costs for themselves. We're hearing from them, and we know that this is urgent, and we would hope that the court system would agree and take it up at in the Supreme Court. We know that that's a tough hurdle to get over, and that not many cases get to that point where they bypass the appeals court. But we thought we owed it to the people impacted to give that a shot.
The 35th Senate District is currently without a senator. Kristen McDonald-Rivet resigned from her seat in January after she won a U.S. House seat. Are you concerned that it hasn't been called yet, that election hasn't been scheduled yet? Are Senate Democrats handling constituent work there?
Yeah, we definitely are handling constituent work there. I made sure that there's staff there answering phone calls. So if someone has an issue with DHHS or unemployment or any part of state government, that there is somebody there picking up the phone and making sure that they are heard, and that we are resolving their issue with the departments. So that is happening. And as you know, the timing of a special election is up to the governor. So we'll see what she does.
When a special election is eventually, called for that seat, it has huge implications. This is a seat that would be competitive. And if Republicans did win, there would be a 19-19 tie in the Senate. How much of that is a concern for you? And, are you having conversations with any potential Democrats to run?
Yeah, we have certainly had some very positive conversations with a number of folks up in the district, and I'm confident that we'll have a very good candidate when the time comes. And it's going to be critical that we maintain that seat so that we can maintain majority. That is absolutely true. But we stand in an incredibly positive position when it comes to our chances there of maintaining it. We just saw yesterday, for instance, a Democrat won in a Pennsylvania state Senate race that went for Trump by 15 points, and they were still able to elect a Democrat there. So the environment is likely to be a very good environment for us, and it's a lean Dem seat, right? It's certainly a toss-up, but the Senate seat there went for Harris in this last election. And that was in unfavorable circumstances when obviously areas surrounding that went for Trump. So we feel like we're in a very positive position in terms of going to the electorate and making our case, and that it continues to get better as we see the destructive nature of the Trump policies really starting to sink in our communities here in Michigan.
One area that a lot of people are thinking about, particularly as we get into spring, is roads. Do Senate Democrats plan on introducing a road funding plan?
So we are certainly contemplating a road funding plan, and we are doing it, and I would say responsibly in concert with our conversations around the budget. To divorce such a massive expense from contemplations about what is funded or what is not funded, to simply introduce, bills that promise cuts, but they're unspecified. That's a road we've been down before. And here we are back again with an inadequate road funding proposal on the table in front of us from the House. So we know that won't work. And so we are interested in taking a look at a road funding plan that also contemplates other important parts of the budget. And it includes certainly some belt tightening and taking a look at where we can reroute some funds that are currently in our budget or that have been in the past, and take a serious evaluation of that into consideration when we think about roads. But we also are realistic enough to understand that we have responsibilities when it comes to things like education, healthcare, veteran services, all kinds of areas of our budget that may be very negatively impacted by a lack of funding and responsible budgeting from the federal level. So we believe, and you've heard the governor say this, and I've said it before, that the best and most practical solution forward on a comprehensive and actually adequate road funding plan that would solve the problem, unlike the plan that was passed in 2015, is going to require at least the contemplation, negotiation, and diplomacy to discuss raising revenue as well.
So moving on to a different topic, Senate Democrats, recently introduced a tax cut plan with a tax credit for some families with children and more. Can you tell us about that proposal and, why you think that this is better than, the income tax cut that the House passed?
Yeah, we've certainly heard from so many families in our districts and so many people in general that the high cost of living is becoming very prohibitive in terms of them being able to make ends meet and really do the things that they want to do for their families and for their futures. So finding ways to help people when they're in those crunch times, and when we know that they have such high expenses with smaller children, that's incredibly important, not just for economics of households, but for the health and well-being of those young children who are at a critical period for their development. So we think it's really important to invest in those families at that time. And so that's what that package does. It really shows that that's where our priorities are. And addressing the increased costs that everybody's experienced, but it's really hitting hard for those young families. So that's why we put that together. The price tag on that is certainly scalable, but it's an indication of where our priorities are. And while we certainly need to see investments in things like roads and infrastructure to ensure that we have clean water and roads to drive on to get to home and school and the doctor's appointment and do all your shopping, none of that makes a lot of sense if you don't actually have the economic foundation to have a successful life. So really, at the end of the day, a responsible approach has to contemplate both of those kinds of expenses in our state budget, and we intend to do that in the Senate.
Last week, the Senate passed a resolution supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion policies amid opposition to many of these types of initiatives from the federal government and President Donald Trump. What do you say to pundits, consultants, maybe even a few fellow Democrats that this is a losing issue right now?
Yeah, just because it's something has been talked about in the news in a negative way doesn't mean it's not important in substance. So I would suggest to them that it's important for us to show that we are clear about providing opportunity and equity in everything that the government does, and we won't shy away from that. And again, it's a resolution. So it's not binding, but it is clear that we actually believe everybody should have a fair shot at success in Michigan. And we made that statement.
So in a sort of weird deja vu, the Senate did pass its Freedom of Information Act expansion earlier this year very quickly. But now the Republican House Speaker says that he won't take it up. Is that disappointing? And, are you hopeful that there could be an agreement made on that legislation despite, some pretty public statements from the speaker against that?
Yeah, I'm not sure which day he's actually telling us what he will or won't do. He's voted for to extend FOIA provisions to state government in the past, and he was asking for it to be put up for a vote last term, and now he's apparently opposed to it. So it depends which day you talk to him. But if he's interested in transparency, I would hope that he would be willing to put this up. I can anticipate the next question. I think he's got transparency package as well that he's touting. However, FOIA really is the foundation of good government transparency. And it's incredibly shameful that our state ranks so low when it comes to government integrity. And this is something we know we can do. I think the speaker has indicated an understanding of that. If he put it up on the board, it would pass. So we've been here before. I'm not sure why he's standing in the way of it. It certainly is disappointing. And at the end of the day, I am really beginning to wonder if he's got something to hide.
So you will be term limited out of the legislature at the end of this year, and everybody already seems to be gearing up for 2026. Do you have any plans just yet?
Well, first of all, I am laser focused on making sure that we retain the Senate as we see the importance of state legislatures in this current environment to be able to defend people's rights and to stand up for the people of our state. I think it's going to be incredibly important that we retain control of the state Senate. So that's my number one job. And, there's a lot of really important things that are in front of us. So I like to remain 100% focused on that. I am not sure what I will be doing next, but I do think that people deserve somebody who is focused on the job that they have. And no matter what's next for me, I am confident that I will have some opportunities to continue to serve my community, whether it's in government or outside of it, is yet to be seen.
All right, Senator Brinks, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Happy Women's History Month. I have to say that. It's great to be here with you. And thanks for all your good coverage of the legislature. I think it's really important that people hear about what's going on in their own backyards.